Victor Montgomery stared at the gleaming aircraft through the terminal window. The same airline that had humiliated him now belonged to him. With one phone call, 5,000 employees would lose everything. He smiled, remembering how it started 7 days ago with a boarding pass. Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and transformation, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Are you team serve justice or team show mercy? Hit that like button if you've ever experienced discrimination, and subscribe to hear more stories of people who fought back against injustice. Now let's rewind to see how a simple boarding denial led to one of the most stunning corporate takeovers in American history. The morning had started perfectly for Victor Montgomery. At 45, the self-made tech billionaire had built Montgomery Digital Solutions from his grandmother's basement into a Fortune 500 company. His sleek Tesla purred to a stop at the departure terminal of Atlanta International Airport, where the driver hurried to retrieve his single carry-on bag. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery," the driver said, handing him the leather bag. "Your flight to New York boards in 40 minutes. Victor nodded appreciatively. "Thank you, James. I should be back Thursday evening." The CEO straightened his impeccably tailored Navy suit and walked confidently through the sliding doors. Despite his wealth, Victor maintained a modest approach to travel. No private jets, no entourage, just efficient business travel. Today's trip to New York included a crucial meeting with potential international investors who could help expand his company's innovative digital security solutions globally. After breezing through security, Victor approached the Skyway Airline's first-class boarding gate. He'd been a Platinum Elite member for 6 years, accumulating over 2 million miles. The digital boarding pass on his phone showed his first-class seat assignment, 2A, window seat, first row. The gate area buzzed with morning travelers, predominantly white businessmen in suits similar to his own. Victor stepped to the counter when his boarding group was called. "Good morning," he said, presenting his digital boarding pass and ID to the gate agent, a middle-aged white woman whose name tag read Karen Whitfield. Karen glanced at his boarding pass, then at Victor, her smile fading slightly. "I'll need to see your physical boarding pass, sir." "I'm using the digital pass on your airline's app," Victor explained politely. "I haven't needed a physical pass for years." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Well, there seems to be a problem with your reservation. Please step aside while I help other passengers." Victor remained calm. "What problem specifically?" "The app shows my confirmed first-class seat." Behind him, a white executive presented his digital boarding pass. Karen smiled brightly, scanned it without question, and wished him a pleasant flight. Victor noticed. "You just accepted his digital boarding pass. May I ask why mine is being questioned?" Karen's voice sharpened. "Sir, if you continue to be disruptive, I'll need to call security." Victor took a deep breath. 20 years of navigating predominantly white business spaces had taught him to stay composed when facing discrimination. "I'm not being disruptive. I'm simply asking for equal treatment." 2 more white passengers boarded with digital passes without incident. "Is there a manager available?" Victor asked calmly. Karen picked up her phone. Victor expected her to call a supervisor. Instead, she called security. Within minutes, 2 security officers approached. "Is there a problem here?" the taller one asked, hand resting near his taser. "This passenger is causing a disruption and refusing to comply with boarding procedures," Karen said before Victor could speak. "I've done nothing disruptive," Victor stated firmly. "I presented my confirmed first-class boarding pass, which was rejected without explanation, while other passengers with identical digital passes were allowed to board." The security officer looked at Karen. "What's the actual issue with his boarding?" Karen fumbled with her computer. "The system shows an issue with his reservation. We need to verify his identity." "I've shown my ID," Victor said, "and I've been a Platinum member for 6 years." The departure time drew closer. Other passengers stared. Victor felt the familiar weight of public scrutiny, the silent judgment questioning his legitimacy in a first-class setting. The security officers, seeming uncomfortable with the situation, stepped back. Karen finally spoke. "Sir, your first-class seat has been reassigned due to aircraft weight balancing. We can accommodate you in economy, section 32, near the rear. Lavatory. Victor knew this was false. Weight balancing didn't selectively target black passengers while allowing white passengers to board first class. But he also knew his options were limited. His investors wouldn't wait if he missed this flight, and the next one wouldn't get him there in time. "I'll take the economy seat rather than miss my meeting," Victor said quietly, accepting the newly printed boarding pass. "But I want your full name and employee ID number." Karen's expression flickered with momentary concern before hardening again. "You can file a complaint with customer service if you want." Victor boarded last, walking the long aisle past the comfortable first-class cabin, where he glimpsed empty seats that contradicted the weight-balancing excuse. He squeezed into the middle seat in row 32, directly adjacent to the lavatory, which slammed throughout the flight. During the flight, Victor observed the service differential. First-class passengers received warm towels and pre-departure beverages. The flight attendant, Melissa Turner, barely acknowledged him during the beverage service, placing his requested water on his tray without eye contact. When his seatmate spilled coffee on Victor's suit sleeve, Melissa offered a single cocktail. Napkin then disappeared. When a white passenger in premium economy had a similar spill, she provided club soda, multiple napkins, and apologetic concern. Victor discreetly used his phone to document the treatment, typing notes between responding to work emails. The man next to him shifted uncomfortably, creating more distance as if Victor's presence was somehow threatening. Halfway through the flight, Melissa noticed Victor's Patek Philippe watch as he checked the time. Her demeanor instantly transformed. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" she asked with newfound warmth. "No, thank you," Victor replied coolly. Her sudden recognition of his worth based on a material possession only highlighted the previous discrimination. The flight landed 30 minutes late due to weather. Victor's economy seat position meant he was among the last to deplane, adding another 20 minutes of delay. By the time he reached his waiting car, he had less than 30 minutes to prepare for his investor meeting, rather than the 90 minutes he'd scheduled. He arrived at the meeting slightly disheveled from the cramped flight and rushed preparation. While he still secured the investment, the terms weren't as favorable as he'd hoped, potentially costing his company millions in the long run. As Victor settled into his hotel room that evening, the accumulation of indignities crystallized into something beyond personal offense. This wasn't just about one bad experience or one prejudiced employee. The systematic nature of the discrimination, from gate agent to flight attendant, suggested something more pervasive within Skyway Airlines. Victor Montgomery hadn't built a billion-dollar company by accepting obstacles. He opened his laptop and began researching Skyway Airlines, making the first moves in what would become much more than a simple customer complaint. The following morning, Victor arranged an emergency breakfast meeting in his hotel suite with his executive team, who had flown in overnight from Atlanta. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxury Manhattan hotel, illuminating the concerned faces of his most trusted colleagues. Amara Johnson, his chief operating officer and longtime friend from their Stanford days, arrived first. At 43, Amara had the same driven intelligence as Victor, combined with an uncanny ability to see patterns in organizational behavior. "Something's wrong," she said immediately, noting Victor's unusual tension. "The meeting didn't go well?" "The meeting was fine," Victor replied, pouring coffee for both of them. "But something happened on the flight here that I can't shake off." As the room filled with his executive leadership team, Victor recounted his experience on Skyway Airlines. He described the denied first-class seat despite his confirmed reservation, the disparate treatment, and the impact on his crucial meeting. When he finished, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Then Amara spoke up. "This isn't isolated, Victor. I've had 3 similar experiences with Skyway in the past year." She described being questioned about her first-class ticket, having her baggage randomly searched multiple times, and being skipped during beverage service. "I stopped flying with them personally, but our corporate account still uses them extensively." Marcus Washington, Victor's chief financial officer, nodded grimly. "Same here. I thought it was just bad luck, but if we're all experiencing this..." Victor's expression hardened. "I want to know if this is systematic, not just our anecdotal experiences, but data. Within hours, Victor had mobilized a discreet investigation. His legal team, led by Harvard-educated Darius Taylor, began collecting testimonials from black executives who had flown Skyway. His data analysis team scraped social media for complaints about racial discrimination on the airline. His human resources director reached out to former Skyway employees through confidential channels. 3 days later, back in his Atlanta headquarters, Victor reviewed the disturbing findings. "The data is conclusive," said Jasmine Williams, his head of data analytics, pointing to charts displayed on the conference room's giant screen. "We've identified 473 social media complaints from black passengers reporting similar treatment on Skyway flights in the past 18 months. That's roughly 8 times the rate of complaints from passengers of other races, accounting for population differences." Darius added, 26 black executives have come forward, with signed affidavits describing almost identical experiences to yours. Denied upgrades despite status, questioned documentation, seating reassignments, differential service. Most damning was what came next. A former Skyway HR manager had provided internal memos showing racial profiling policies disguised as security protocols. The memos outlined procedures for additional verification for passengers who don't match typical first-class demographic profiles, a thinly veiled code for racial discrimination. "There's more," Amara said, sliding a folder across the table. "Our private investigator uncovered something interesting about Skyway's CEO, Bradford Williams." The folder contained transcripts from executive retreats where Bradford had made explicitly racially insensitive comments. In one, he'd joked about keeping ticket prices high enough to maintain the right customer mix. In another, he'd complained about diversity hiring targets affecting company culture. Victor's face remained impassive as he read, but his fingers tightened on the paper. "One last thing," Marcus interjected. "While researching their organization, we discovered Skyway is in much worse financial shape than they publicly admit. They've been losing market share for 6 consecutive quarters. Their debt-to-equity ratio is dangerous. They're quietly seeking emergency capital investment to avoid bankruptcy proceedings." Victor stood and walked to the window, looking out, over the Atlanta skyline he'd helped reshape with his company's success. After a long moment, he turned back to his team. "This isn't just about what happened to me," he said quietly. "This is about a publicly traded company systematically discriminating against black customers while lying to shareholders about their financial stability." The room was silent, waiting for his decision. "I could file a lawsuit," Victor continued. "We have enough evidence. But lawsuits take years, and corporations have become adept at managing the public relations fallout. By the time anything's resolved, the damage to countless other passengers will be done." Amara recognized the look in Victor's eyes. "You have something else in mind?" Victor nodded slowly. "Companies only change when the cost of continuing bad behavior exceeds the cost of changing. Bradford Williams has created a culture of discrimination while driving his company toward financial ruin. That's not just morally wrong, it's a breach of fiduciary duty." He returned to the table and pressed a button on the conference phone. "Jennifer, please connect us with our investment banking team at Goldman Sachs." As they waited for the call to connect, Victor looked around at his team. "I'm not just going to complain about discrimination. I'm going to buy the airline that discriminated against me, fire the people responsible, and transform it into a model of equitable service." The bankers joined the call, and Victor outlined his initial plan. By the end of the day, his team had begun discreetly analyzing Skyway Airlines' stock vulnerability and preparing for what would become one of the most unexpected corporate takeovers in recent business history. That evening, as Victor drove home, he passed a Skyway billboard advertising their premium customer experience. The irony wasn't lost on him. Soon, he would redefine exactly what that experience meant. What would you do if you faced blatant discrimination from a major corporation? Would you accept their token apology, or would you fight for real change? Comment number 1. If you believe companies should be held fully accountable for discriminatory practices, or number 2. If you think individual employees, not entire organizations, should bear responsibility. Don't forget to like this video if you've ever witnessed unfair treatment in action, and subscribe to see how Victor's incredible strategy unfolds. Now, let's see how Skyway Airlines responded when confronted with their discriminatory behavior. Victor Montgomery believed in proper channels. Before launching his acquisition plan, he decided to give Skyway Airlines an opportunity to address their discriminatory practices directly. Perhaps, he reasoned, they simply needed the situation brought to their attention by someone with enough influence to be taken seriously. The morning after his strategy meeting with his executive team, Victor drafted a formal complaint to Skyway's customer service department. The letter was detailed, professional, and specific, outlining the discrimination he'd experienced from boarding through deplaning. He included his Platinum Elite membership number, flight details, and the names of the employees involved. He requested a formal review of their policies and staff training procedures. "This isn't about compensation," he wrote in closing. "This is about ensuring equal treatment for all passengers regardless of race." 5 business days later, an envelope arrived with the Skyway logo. Victor opened it in his office, Amara watching from across his desk. Inside was a form letter, beginning with "Dear Valued Customer," and a pre-printed signature from a customer relations specialist. The letter contained generic apologies for his less than satisfactory experience, without acknowledging any specifics of his complaint. Attached was a voucher for $50 off his next Skyway flight. Amara raised an eyebrow as Victor passed her the letter. $50 for racial discrimination. That's their valuation of human dignity? Victor took back the letter, folding it carefully. Actually, this is helpful. It demonstrates they don't take these complaints seriously. But let's give them one more chance at the executive level. Victor's executive assistant arranged a call with Skyway's Vice President of Customer Experience, Patricia Mills. After being kept on hold for 17 minutes, Victor was connected. "Mr. Montgomery, I understand you had some concerns about a recent flight," Patricia began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of corporate damage control. Victor described his experience again, emphasizing the pattern his team had uncovered through social media analysis and testimonials. "I appreciate your feedback," Patricia responded, using the exact phrase 4 times during their 15-minute conversation. "I can assure you that Skyway Airlines does not discriminate. What you experienced was likely a misunderstanding about our boarding protocols." "A misunderstanding that somehow only affects Black passengers?" Victor asked pointedly. "I wouldn't characterize it that way," Patricia replied, her voice cooling. "We value all our customers equally." "Then you should be concerned about the statistical evidence suggesting otherwise. I'd be happy to share our analysis with you." "That won't be necessary. We conduct our own internal reviews. I can add a note to your Platinum account to ensure smoother boarding in the future." The implication was clear. His individual complaint might warrant special treatment, but the systemic issue would be ignored. Victor thanked her for her time and ended the call. "Strike 2, Amara said from the doorway, having overheard the conversation. "What's next?" "We go straight to the top," Victor replied. "Set up a meeting with Bradford Williams." Arranging a meeting with Skyway's CEO proved challenging until Victor's team proposed a potential partnership between Montgomery Digital Solutions and Skyway for enhanced cybersecurity services. The suggestion of a multi-million-dollar contract opened doors immediately. 3 days later, Victor sat in the waiting area of Skyway's corporate headquarters in Dallas. The receptionist had offered him coffee twice, clearly surprised by his presence despite his scheduled appointment. When white executives arrived after him, they were escorted in immediately for their meetings. Victor was kept waiting for 45 minutes. Finally, an assistant appeared. "Mr. Williams can spare 15 minutes for you now." Victor was led into an expansive corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. Bradford Williams stood behind his desk, a tall, ruddy-faced man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensively tailored suit. He did not extend his hand. "I understand you're interested in providing security services," Bradford said without preamble. "I have another meeting shortly, so let's get right to it." Victor sat across from Bradford, maintaining eye contact. Actually, Mr. Williams, I'm here about something more important than a service contract. I'm here about the discriminatory practices at Skyway Airlines. Bradford's expression shifted from impatience to wariness. Excuse me? Last week, I experienced racial discrimination on one of your flights. When I investigated further, I discovered this is a pattern, not an isolated incident. Victor placed a folder on Bradford's desk. This contains testimonials, statistical analysis, and internal memos demonstrating that Skyway systematically discriminates against black passengers, particularly in premium cabins. Bradford didn't touch the folder. That's a serious accusation, without merit. If you had a personal experience that didn't meet your expectations, our customer service department, I've already communicated with them, and with your VP of customer experience, Victor interrupted smoothly. The responses were inadequate. Look, Mr. Bradford paused, pretending to have forgotten Victor's name. Montgomery. Victor Montgomery, CEO of Montgomery Digital Solutions. A flicker of recognition crossed Bradford's face, quickly replaced by calculated indifference. Mr. Montgomery, in the airline industry, we make thousands of decisions daily about seating, boarding, and service based on operational factors. If you're perceiving some of these decisions as racially motivated, perhaps you're being overly sensitive. The phrase overly sensitive hung in the air between them. Victor maintained his composure. The data suggests otherwise. When black passengers are 8 times more likely to be downgraded from first class, that's not perception. It's discrimination. Bradford leaned forward. What exactly are you looking for here? A free flight? A public apology? I'm looking for accountability and change. Your company has a systemic problem that starts at the top. I'm giving you the opportunity to address it before I explore other avenues. Are you threatening me? Bradford's voice hardened. I'm offering you a chance to correct a serious ethical and legal issue within your organization. Bradford stood, abruptly. I think we're done here. If you want to pursue this fantasy of systemic racism, my legal team will be happy to respond to any formal complaints, but I'd think carefully before making defamatory claims about Skyway. We have very good lawyers. Victor rose calmly, straightening his suit jacket. So do I, Mr. Williams. And unlike Skyway, my company isn't fighting to stay solvent. Bradford's face reddened. What are you talking about? Your last 3 quarterly reports contained material misrepresentations about Skyway's financial health. That's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. Get out of my office, Bradford snarled, reaching for his phone. Security will escort you out. Victor walked to the door, then turned back. One last thing, Mr. Williams. When I was denied my rightful seat on your airline, the gate agent threatened to call security too. It seems to be your company's go-to response when confronted with uncomfortable truths. As security arrived, Victor handed them his business card. Please make sure Mr. Williams keeps that folder. He'll want to review it before his next board meeting. In the elevator descending from the executive floor, Victor made a call. Darius? It's Victor. Bradford refused to address the discrimination issues and threatened legal action if we go public. He paused, listening to the elevator music. Yes, exactly as we anticipated. Initiate Phase 2 immediately, and contact our investment banking team. It's time to move forward with the acquisition plan. As Victor exited the Skyway headquarters, he noticed a janitor emptying trash cans, an older black man who nodded respectfully as Victor passed. The man's Skyway uniform was worn at the edges, his hands calloused from decades of labor. Victor nodded back, his resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about a denied first-class seat anymore. It was about changing a system that devalued people based on the color of their skin, from the boardroom to the cabin to the maintenance hangar. Bradford Williams had made his choice. Now Victor would make his. The following morning, Victor convened his financial team in the secure conference room at Montgomery Digital Solutions headquarters. The room, designed for their most sensitive discussions, featured signal-blocking technology, biometric access, controls, and a stunning view of downtown Atlanta through bulletproof glass. Present were Marcus Washington, CFO, Elaine Chen, Head of Investment Strategy, and representatives from their partner financial institutions. Victor had also brought in Warren Hughes, a specialist in corporate acquisitions who had helped orchestrate several major takeovers in the tech sector. Skyway Airlines has rejected every opportunity to address their discriminatory practices, Victor began, standing at the head of the conference table. So we're moving to Plan B. I want to acquire controlling interest in the company. Warren raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious even for you. Skyway is publicly traded with a market cap of nearly $4 billion. Currently $3.2 billion and falling, Marcus corrected, displaying financial charts on the room's monitors. They've lost 18% of their value in the past quarter due to rising fuel costs, labor disputes, and declining passenger numbers. Elaine nodded. Our analysis suggests they're more vulnerable than they appear. They've been masking their financial troubles with creative accounting and optimistic projections. Victor activated a secure presentation on the main screen. I've committed $1 billion of my personal capital to this acquisition. Here's our approach. The plan was methodical and discreet. Rather than making a public tender offer that would alert Skyway to the takeover attempt, they would gradually purchase shares through various holding companies and investment vehicles to avoid triggering SEC disclosure requirements until they were ready to make their move. We'll need to stay under the radar, Warren cautioned. Once Bradford realizes what's happening, he'll fight back with everything he has. That's why timing is crucial, Victor agreed. Marcus has identified their most vulnerable period. Skyway has $300 million in corporate bonds coming due next quarter. Given their current cash flow problems, they'll struggle to refinance without significantly higher interest rates. The team spent hours refining the strategy, establishing shell companies, preparing legal documentation, and coordinating with their banking partners. By noon, the first quiet purchases of Skyway stock had begun through a network of brokers instructed to buy gradually to avoid driving up the price. Within days, financial news outlets began reporting on Skyway's troubles. The Wall Street Journal published an investigative piece highlighting discrepancies in their financial reporting. Bloomberg questioned their ability to meet upcoming debt obligations. The stock dropped another 12%, accelerating Victor's acquisition timeline. What Bradford Williams couldn't know, was that Victor's team had quietly approached several institutional investors with significant Skyway holdings, sharing evidence of mismanagement and discriminatory practices under confidentiality agreements. 3 major pension funds agreed to sell their shares at a modest premium, giving Victor nearly 15% of the company within the first week. While the financial maneuvers proceeded, Victor maintained his normal schedule, speaking at industry conferences and attending charity events to avoid arousing suspicion. At a tech leadership dinner, he overheard 2 executives discussing Skyway's plummeting stock. Someone's buying up shares, one said. The question is who? Victor sipped his water and said nothing. The acquisition plan was proceeding perfectly, until Victor's 16-year-old daughter Zoe came home from her elite private school in tears one afternoon. Victor, who had rearranged his schedule to attend her debate tournament that evening, was in his home office when she stormed in. "What did you do to the Williams family?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Victor set down his tablet. "What are you talking about, Zoe?" "Tyler Williams. His dad runs an airline. Tyler said you're trying to destroy his family's company because you're playing the race card." Tears streamed down her face. "He told everyone in school that my dad is a corporate raider who cries racism when he doesn't get what he wants. Now nobody will talk to me." Victor felt a cold anger rise at Bradford's tactics, using children to fight his battles, but kept his voice calm. "Tyler Williams is repeating things he's heard at home, things that aren't true." "Then what is true? Are you trying to take over his dad's company?" Victor hesitated. He'd kept the acquisition plan private for strategic reasons, telling only Zoe's mother, his ex-wife Diana, with whom he shared custody and maintained a respectful co-parenting relationship. "It's complicated, Zoe. I experienced discrimination on a Skyway flight, and when I investigated, I found it wasn't an isolated incident." "So you're buying their company for revenge?" "That's what Tyler said. It's not about revenge. It's about accountability and change. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to take control of it." Zoe wiped her tears angrily. Tyler says his grandfather started that airline. It's been in their family for 50 years. How would you feel if someone tried to take your company because of one mistake? This wasn't one mistake, Zoe. It was a pattern of discrimination affecting thousands of people. But Victor could see his daughter wasn't ready to hear it. The social backlash at school had overwhelmed her ability to process the ethical complexities. She left his office, debate tournament forgotten, and locked herself in her room. That night, Victor nearly abandoned the acquisition plan. His daughter's distress weighed heavily on him, making the corporate battle suddenly seem trivial compared to his family's well-being. He called his grandmother, Eleanora Montgomery, the family matriarch at 87. Eleanora had grown up in segregated Alabama, built a successful beauty business despite racist obstacles, and put Victor's father through college. Her wisdom had guided Victor through every major life decision. "Grandma, I'm considering backing off this acquisition. Zoe's caught in the crossfire and it's hurting her." Eleanora's voice was gentle but firm. "Victor James Montgomery, when I was younger than Zoe, I had to drink from separate water fountains marked colored. I couldn't try on clothes in stores or eat at lunch counters. Your grandfather was denied a bank loan 27 times before he could start his carpentry business." She paused, and Victor could picture her straightening in her chair the way she did when making an important point. "What you're doing isn't just about you, or even about Zoe. It's about all the people who board those planes and are treated as less than because of their skin color. Sometimes our children have to see us fight uncomfortable battles so they learn how to fight their own. But Zoe doesn't understand. She thinks I'm the villain." "Then help her understand. Show her the evidence. Treat her like the intelligent young woman she is. The world will try to make her feel small many times in her life because she's both black and female. Don't you be the first to underestimate her." After their call, Victor knocked on Zoe's door. When she reluctantly let him in, he brought his laptop and the folder of evidence about Skyway's discrimination. For 2 hours, they sat on her bed reviewing testimonials, statistics, and internal documents. "This is why I'm doing this," Victor explained as Zoe read a particularly moving account from a black grandmother who had been humiliated on a Skyway flight. "Not for revenge, but because I have the resources to create change where others can't." By the end of their conversation, Zoe didn't fully approve of his tactics, but she understood his motivation. "I still wish there was another way," she said, "but I get it now." The next day, Victor received a call from Diana, who had been confronted by Bradford's wife at a charity committee meeting. "Whatever you're doing, be careful," Diana warned. "These people are desperate and connected." Victor assured her he was taking precautions, but the warning proved prescient. The following week, as his team approached 25% ownership of Skyway, the counterattacks began. An anonymous source leaked information to financial blogs questioning Montgomery. Digital Solutions security protocols. A sudden audit was announced for one of their government contracts. Victor's personal tax returns from 3 years prior became the subject of online speculation. Each attack was deflected by Victor's legal and PR teams, but they signaled that Bradford had figured out who was behind the stock purchases and was retaliating with everything at his disposal. The most effective approach came through the investors. Bradford personally called Skyway's largest remaining institutional shareholders, warning them about a hostile takeover attempt by a competitor with a personal vendetta. He implemented a poison pill strategy to dilute shares if any single entity acquired more than 30% of the company. Victor's acquisition stalled at 29%, just short of the threshold needed to force board representation. The financial press began running stories about the mysterious buyer accumulating Skyway stock, with speculation focusing on competitor airlines or private equity firms looking for distressed assets. Bradford Williams appeared on CNBC, projecting confidence. "Skyway Airlines has weathered industry challenges for 50 years. Our financial position is strong, our customer satisfaction ratings are excellent, and we view this opportunistic stock accumulation as a vote of confidence in our brand's value." It was a masterful performance, temporarily stabilizing the stock price and complicating Victor's strategy. That evening, as Victor reviewed options with his team, Marcus brought disturbing news. Bradford's reached out to Saudi investors for An emergency capital infusion. If they agree, our leverage disappears. Victor nodded thoughtfully. Then we need to accelerate our timeline. Contact the remaining institutional investors we've been cultivating. It's time to make our final move. As he left the office that night, Victor received a text from Zoe. Whatever happens with Skyway, I'm proud of you for fighting discrimination, Dad. Tyler Williams doesn't speak to me anymore, and that's actually an improvement. Victor smiled, the weight of his daughter's earlier distress lifting slightly. The battle was far from over, but he had already won something more important than corporate control, his daughter's understanding and respect. The next phase would be the most challenging yet, as Bradford Williams realized the full extent of the threat to his company and position. Victor knew the Skyway CEO would use every weapon at his disposal, ethical or otherwise, to maintain control. But Victor had built his career by anticipating obstacles and finding creative paths forward. As he drove home through the Atlanta evening, Victor passed a Skyway Airlines billboard featuring a smiling, diverse group of passengers. The irony wasn't lost on him. Soon, that marketing imagery would reflect reality, not fiction. If his plan succeeded, Bradford Williams stared at the stock ownership report, his face flushing crimson. Someone had systematically acquired 29% of Skyway Airlines shares over the past 3 weeks, carefully staying just below the threshold that would trigger their poison pill defense mechanism. Who the hell is behind this? He demanded, slamming the report onto his mahogany desk. His executive team shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None wanted to deliver the answer. Finally, his chief financial officer cleared his throat. We've traced the majority of purchases to several holding companies and investment vehicles. They appear disconnected, but our analysts believe they're all controlled by the same entity. What entity? Bradford snapped. Montgomery Holdings. Bradford froze. Montgomery? As in Victor Montgomery. Yes, sir. The CEO who visited you last month about discrimination complaints. Bradford's explosion of profanity sent his assistant scurrying from the adjacent office and made several executives wince. When he finally regained composure, his voice was dangerously quiet. That arrogant bastard thinks he can take my company because he didn't get the seat he wanted? My father built Skyway from nothing. I expanded it across 3 continents. I am not about to let some tech upstart with a racial grievance steal my legacy. He stood abruptly. Call an emergency board meeting and get me our crisis management team, now. Across the country in Atlanta, Victor received word of the emergency board meeting from a sympathetic Skyway board member who had grown concerned about Bradford's management. The battle was now in the open. The financial press exploded with the breaking tech billionaire behind Skyway takeover attempt. Victor's photo appeared on financial news channels alongside speculation about his motives. Most reports framed it as a standard corporate acquisition, missing the discrimination angle entirely. Bradford seized control of the narrative, portraying himself as the defender of a family legacy against a predatory tech billionaire. In a carefully orchestrated interview on Bloomberg, he suggested Victor's company was struggling to maintain relevance and seeking diversification into unrelated industries out of desperation. Montgomery Digital Solutions has missed their last 2 quarterly earnings targets, Bradford claimed falsely. This hostile takeover attempt is a distraction from their own business failures. Victor's PR team recommended an immediate rebuttal, but he declined. Let him talk. Every public statement he makes becomes evidence if we need to sue for defamation. Instead, Victor focused on solidifying his position, working with his investment bankers to identify additional shares available for purchase. The poison pill made acquiring beyond 30% prohibitively expensive, but if he could gain board representation, he could begin pushing for leadership changes from within. The pressure intensified as Bradford deployed more aggressive tactics. Skyway's corporate clients suddenly began receiving calls suggesting that Montgomery Digital Solutions had security vulnerabilities. Several of Victor's long-standing business partners reported uncomfortable conversations with industry contacts, questioning whether they should maintain relationships with his company. They're trying to damage our core business, Amara reported, during their daily strategy meeting. 3 clients have put contract renewals on hold pending further review of our security protocols. Victor remained composed. Have our security team prepare comprehensive documentation of our certifications and testing protocols. Offer additional third-party verification if requested. We have nothing to hide. The attacks became more personal. Financial bloggers began writing about a 5-year-old lawsuit against Montgomery Digital Solutions that had been settled confidentially. The details were distorted to suggest wrongdoing rather than the routine intellectual property dispute it had been. More concerning was the escalation against Victor's family. Zoe called from school, her voice shaking. "Dad, someone submitted a fake article under my name to the school newspaper. It said I was ashamed of how you make money and that you taught me to play the race card whenever I don't get what I want." Victor's grip tightened on his phone. "Did you tell the faculty advisor?" "Yes. She pulled it before publication, but someone leaked a draft to the student messaging groups. Everyone's seen it." That same afternoon, Victor learned his daughter's application to Princeton, her dream school where he had established a significant scholarship fund for minority students, had been mysteriously lost in the system. The admissions officer apologized profusely, explaining they had no record of her submission despite confirmation emails showing it had been received months earlier. Victor didn't believe in coincidences. A board member at Princeton had close ties to Skyway's parent company. The situation deteriorated further when Victor discovered Bradford had hired private investigators to scrutinize his personal and professional life. Employees reported being approached by strangers asking questions about company practices. Victor's neighbors were questioned about his lifestyle and habits. Most alarming was the reopening of a previously dismissed lawsuit against Montgomery Digital Solutions. 3 years earlier, a competitor had accused them of patent infringement, a case dismissed by federal courts for lack of merit. Suddenly, the plaintiff had new legal representation from a prestigious firm known to represent Skyway Airlines, and new evidence necessitating the case being reopened. "They're trying everything to force us to back off," Darius explained during an emergency legal briefing. The litigation costs alone could run into millions, not to mention the PR damage. Victor absorbed the information calmly. "Prepare our defense, but don't let this distract from our primary objective. Bradford is desperate, which means we're closer to success than he wants us to believe." The most disturbing escalation came when Amara arrived at work visibly shaken. Overnight, someone had spray-painted racial slurs and "stay in your lane" across her garage door. Police classified it as random vandalism, despite the specific nature of the message. "This has gone too far," Victor said when he saw the photos. "Are you and the kids okay?" Amara nodded stiffly. "We're fine. My husband stayed home today to deal with it. But Victor, this isn't random. This is intimidation." "I know." Victor's voice was quiet but filled with resolve. "And it confirms we're doing the right thing. Organizations willing to use these tactics shouldn't have power over thousands of employees and millions of customers." Despite his confident words, Victor seriously considered abandoning the acquisition that evening. The escalating attacks on his family, friends, and company tested his commitment. Was corporate accountability worth this personal cost? The decision point came unexpectedly, through a phone call from an unfamiliar number. Victor almost declined, it assuming another harassment attempt, but something made him answer. "Mr. Montgomery, my name is Richard Donahue. I'm a member of Skyway's board of directors." Victor remained silent, waiting. "I'm not calling in any official capacity," Richard D. continued. "What I'm about to tell you isn't with board approval, but I can't stay silent anymore." "I'm listening," Victor said cautiously. "I've been on Skyway's board for 11 years. Initially, Bradford seemed like a strong leader, tough but effective. Over time, I've watched him become increasingly autocratic and, frankly, prejudiced." Richard described witnessing Bradford's dismissal of diversity initiatives, his jokes about passengers from certain neighborhoods, his repeated blocking of appointments for qualified black executives. "The discrimination you experienced wasn't an anomaly. It reflects leadership attitudes that have permeated the company culture. Several board members have tried to address it internally without success." "Why are you telling me this now?" Victor asked. "Because Bradford crossed a line. At yesterday's emergency board meeting, He presented a plan to discredit you that included tactics I consider unethical and possibly illegal. When I objected, I was reminded that my board seat depends on his support. There was a pause before Richard continued. I've spent my career trying to work within systems to improve them. I'm telling you this because I believe Skyway needs the kind of leadership change you're attempting to initiate. Several board members feel the same way, but are afraid to speak up. After the call ended, Victor sat in his home office, turning over this new information. The stakes had just increased significantly. This wasn't merely about personal vindication or even addressing discrimination in one company. It was about corporate governance, ethical leadership, and the responsibility that came with controlling an organization that employed thousands and served millions. Victor made 2 calls. The first was to his security team, arranging additional protection for Amara, Zoe, and other key executives. The second was to his investment banking partners. We need to move faster, he instructed. Bradford is becoming desperate and dangerous. How close are we to securing the additional shares we discussed? The answer was promising. A major institutional investor had indicated willingness to sell their 7% stake, which would give Victor effective control when combined with the sympathetic board members Richard had mentioned. The next morning, Victor called an all-hands meeting at Montgomery Digital Solutions. Hundreds of employees filled the auditorium, with others joining virtually from offices around the world. You've all seen the news about our Skyway Airlines investment, Victor began. What you haven't heard is why this matters to our company and our values. For the next 30 minutes, Victor explained the discrimination he'd experienced, the pattern his team had uncovered, and the escalating tactics used against them. He was transparent about the challenges they faced and the potential impact on their business. I won't proceed if this company isn't behind me, he concluded. This will get harder before it gets easier. I need to know where you stand. The response was immediate. First, a few employees stood, then dozens. Then the entire auditorium rose in standing ovation. Messages of support flooded in from remote employees. Energized by his team's backing, Victor initiated the final phase of his acquisition plan. As Bradford Williams employed increasingly desperate tactics, Victor methodically consolidated his position, prepared for the coming confrontation, and remained focused on the ultimate goal. Not just owning an airline, but transforming its culture. The battle for Skyway Airlines was entering its most critical phase, with both sides fully committed and the outcome hanging in the balance. For Victor, what had begun as a response to personal discrimination had evolved into a mission that would test every aspect of his leadership and resolve. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where everything you've worked for seems to be crumbling around you, when the people fighting against you seem to have the upper hand? Comment number 1. If you've ever faced a moment where giving up seemed like the only option, or number 2, if you believe persistence always pays off in the end. Like this video if you're rooting for Victor to overcome these devastating setbacks, and subscribe to find out if he can turn the tables on Bradford Williams and his ruthless tactics. Now, let's dive into Victor's darkest hour. Victor Montgomery stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment, watching lightning split the Atlanta skyline. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil he faced professionally and personally. In just 72 hours, his carefully constructed plan to acquire Skyway Airlines had unraveled spectacularly. The cascade of disasters began with Bradford Williams' most audacious counterattack yet. Major news outlets simultaneously broke a story claiming Montgomery Digital Solutions had violated user privacy by selling customer data to third parties without consent. A devastating allegation for a company built on digital security. The source remained anonymous, but the documentation appeared convincing at first glance. Internal emails, contract excerpts, and financial transfers. The stock market reacted immediately. Montgomery Digital Solutions shares plummeted 37% in a single trading day, triggering circuit breakers and pausing trading multiple times. Victor's phone rang constantly as board members, investors, and partners demanded explanations. Major clients initiated emergency security reviews. Government contracts were suspended pending investigation. The company's market value evaporated by billions overnight. The timing couldn't have been worse. Victor was 49% toward his goal of controlling Skyway Airlines, with negotiations underway for the final shares needed. Those negotiations collapsed as his company's reputation imploded. The institutional investors are backing out, Marcus reported during an emergency meeting. They're citing reputational risk associated with our company. Amara added grimly, "Our banking partners are nervous too. Bank of America is threatening to call in the loans we used for the initial stock purchases, claiming material change in our financial position." Victor maintained outward calm, but internally he recognized the existential threat. Bradford Williams had struck at the heart of his company's value proposition: trust and security. Even if they disproved the allegations, the damage to client confidence could be irreversible. The legal team worked around the clock to investigate the leaked documents. By morning, they had their answer. "The emails are sophisticated forgeries," Darius reported, eyes red from lack of sleep. "They contain metadata inconsistencies and reference projects using internal code names that were changed 2 years ago. Someone with insider knowledge created these, but they're definitely fake." "Can we prove it conclusively?" Victor asked. "Yes, but it will take time. Time we don't have with the market in freefall." The situation deteriorated further when Victor received notice that his personal bank accounts had been frozen due to suspicious activity requiring investigation. The bank apologized for the inconvenience, but estimated the review could take up to 30 business days. "This isn't coincidence," Amara said when Victor shared the news. "Bradford has connections throughout the financial industry. He's using every lever to apply pressure." The personal attacks escalated. Zoe called in tears. Princeton rescinded. "My acceptance, Dad." They said there were concerns about application integrity they couldn't disclose. "This was my dream school." Victor felt a searing anger unlike anything he'd experienced before. Using business tactics against him was one thing. Attacking his daughter's future crossed every line. That evening brought the heaviest blow. Amara arrived at his office, closing the door behind her. "I've been approached," she said without preamble. "Bradford Williams offered me the COO position at Skyway Airlines with a $7 million signing bonus and double my current salary if I leave immediately and provide strategic insights about our acquisition plan." Victor studied his friend's face. "That's a generous offer." "It's a bribe, Victor, and it comes with an implied threat." The intermediary mentioned how unfortunate it would be if the anonymous data breach allegations expanded to implicate specific executives. "Are you considering it?" Amara looked offended. "Of course not, but the fact they approached me means they're getting desperate and dangerous. They're trying to destroy your company from the inside out." As midnight approached, Victor sat alone in his office, the culmination of 15 years of work crumbling. Around him, Montgomery Digital Solutions stock had lost 45% of its value in 2 days. Major clients were invoking contract termination clauses. The Skyway acquisition, which had started as a response to discrimination, now threatened everything he'd built. His phone buzzed with a text from Bradford Williams himself, the first direct communication since their meeting. "Ready to end this? One call stops the bleeding. Walk away from Skyway, and this all disappears. Simple choice." Victor stared at the message, tempted for the first time to surrender. The cost had become too high, the collateral damage too extensive. He could salvage his company by retreating, issue denials of the false allegations, rebuild over time. It would be the rational business decision. As rain lashed against his office windows, Victor remembered his grandmother's words about fighting uncomfortable battles. He thought of the Skyway employees who deserved better leadership, the passengers who deserved equal treatment, and his daughter who was watching how he responded to injustice. Victor typed a reply. "Nothing worth doing is ever simple. See you at the shareholders' meeting." He didn't expect a response, but one came immediately. "Your funeral." Victor put down his phone and opened his laptop. Bradford believed he'd won, that Victor would be too busy saving his own company to continue the Skyway battle. That assumption created an opportunity. For the next 3 hours, Victor worked alone, drafting a comprehensive strategy document titled Phoenix Protocol. When completed, he sent it to his core team with a meeting request for 6 a.m. As sunrise broke through the dissipating storm clouds, Victor's executive team assembled, exhausted but determined. He distributed printed copies of his plan. "Bradford, Williams believes he's won," Victor began. "He's expecting us to focus entirely on defending against his allegations. Instead, we're going to counterattack on both fronts simultaneously." The strategy was bold and risky. Rather than playing defense, they would aggressively expose Bradford's tactics while accelerating their Skyway acquisition timeline. "Darius, I want our legal team to prepare SEC whistleblower filings about Bradford's market manipulation and false allegations. Marcus, liquidate my personal investment portfolio if necessary to maintain our Skyway position. No margin calls. Amara, prepare a comprehensive transparency report demonstrating our data handling practices for all clients." Victor turned to Jasmine. "Most importantly, I need your team to trace the source of the forged documents. Those forgeries required inside knowledge of our systems. We may have a security breach." The team dispersed with renewed purpose. 3 hours later, Jasmine returned with critical findings. The document forgeries were sophisticated but left digital fingerprints. They were created on Skyway corporate servers and accessed using Bradford Williams credentials. This was the evidence they needed. Victor immediately contacted friendly journalists at major tech publications, sharing the forensic analysis under embargo until they could verify independently. By midday, the first counter-narrative appeared on TechCrunch. Exclusive, privacy. Breach allegations against Montgomery Digital appear fabricated. Other outlets followed, as Victor's team provided access to their security logs and documentation disproving the allegations. Financial regulators, alerted through official channels, announced a formal investigation into potential market manipulation. Victor's bank mysteriously discovered the suspicious activity, had been a false alarm, and restored access to his accounts. The most unexpected development came from inside Skyway itself. The whistleblower Richard had mentioned made contact through secure channels, providing internal emails showing Bradford had ordered the deletion of discrimination complaints from their customer service database before government regulators could request records. As these revelations accumulated, public sentiment shifted dramatically. Montgomery Digital Solutions stock began recovering as the false nature of the allegations became apparent. Clients who had paused contracts cautiously resumed discussions. On social media, Skyway shenanigans began trending as passengers shared their own discrimination experiences. A viral video showed another black executive being questioned about his first-class ticket, while white passengers boarded without scrutiny, precisely mirroring Victor's experience. The turning point came unexpectedly when the sympathetic Skyway board member, Richard Donahue, publicly broke ranks. In an interview with CNBC, he expressed concerns about Bradford Williams's leadership and the company's culture, stopping short of directly confirming the discrimination allegations, but lending credibility to Victor's claims. "As a board member, I have a fiduciary duty to shareholders," Richard stated carefully. "Recent events have raised serious questions about our current leadership that require thorough investigation." Other board members, sensing the shifting winds, began privately reaching out to Victor. The institutional investor who had backed away from selling their shares renewed discussions. 7 days after Bradford's devastating attack, Victor had not only survived, but regained momentum. His company's stock had recovered much of its losses. The Skyway acquisition was back on track. Most importantly, the narrative had shifted from a hostile takeover to a necessary leadership change at a troubled company. In his office that evening, Victor received an unexpected visit from Zoe. She placed a letter on his desk. "It's from Princeton," she said, her expression unreadable. Victor opened it cautiously, then broke into a smile. "They've reversed their decision. Your acceptance is reinstated with a full apology." Zoe nodded. The admissions director called personally. She said they discovered concerning external influence in their process and have referred the matter to their ethics committee. She sat across from her father. "You didn't give up, even when everything was falling apart." "Some fights are bigger than ourselves," Victor replied. Sometimes the hardest path is the right one. As Zoe left, Victor returned to his work with renewed determination. Bradford Williams had used every weapon at his disposal, from corporate resources to personal connections, and still failed to deter him. The final confrontation loomed, but Victor now held the stronger position. The darkest night had passed. Dawn was breaking on a new day for both Montgomery Digital Solutions and Skyway Airlines. But Victor knew better than to underestimate Bradford's desperation as his control slipped away. The most dangerous phase of their battle still lay ahead. The atmosphere in Montgomery Digital Solutions headquarters hummed with renewed energy. Just 2 weeks after Bradford Williams' devastating attack, the company had not only survived, but emerged stronger. Their stock had recovered to 92% of its pre-crisis value. Major clients had renewed contracts with enhanced terms. Most importantly, Victor's acquisition of Skyway Airlines had regained momentum. Victor gathered his core team in the strategy room, where digital displays tracked their progress in real time. Their Skyway holdings stood at 47%, tantalizingly close to the controlling interest needed to force leadership changes. Bradford is running out of options, Marcus observed, reviewing the financial data. Skyway's bond rating was downgraded yesterday after the SEC announced their investigation. They're struggling to refinance their debt. Amara nodded. Our whistleblower reports more executives are updating their resumes. The internal culture is fracturing as people position themselves for the expected leadership change. Victor studied the information quietly. Experience had taught him that opponents were most dangerous when cornered. What's Bradford's next move likely to be? Darius, who had been analyzing Skyway's corporate bylaws, looked up from his tablet. Based on similar cases, he might attempt a poison pill strategy, making the company so toxic that acquisition becomes pointless. He's already tried damaging our reputation, Amara pointed out. That failed. There are other approaches, Darius explained. He could rapidly divest valuable assets, enter into unfavorable long-term contracts, or take on excessive debt with onerous terms. Victor considered this. All those actions would violate his fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. The board wouldn't approve. Not the full board, Darius agreed. But as CEO, he has unilateral authority over certain operational decisions that could significantly damage the airline's value. Victor made a decision. We need to accelerate our timeline. Marcus, contact our banking partners. I want options for acquiring the remaining shares needed for control within 48 hours, not 2 weeks. The team dispersed with clear directives. Victor remained in the strategy room, studying the complex web of financial and legal relationships they'd mapped around Skyway Airlines. Something nagged at him, a vulnerability they hadn't identified, or an angle they hadn't considered. His concentration was interrupted by a call from an unfamiliar number. Normally, he would have let it go to voicemail, but intuition made him answer. Mr. Montgomery, this is Sandra Chen, legal counsel for Transcontinental Investment Partners. Victor recognized the name immediately, one of the largest institutional investors in Skyway, holding approximately 8% of outstanding shares. They had previously rebuffed his acquisition overtures. Ms. Chen, what can I do for you? Our investment committee has reconsidered your offer for our Skyway Airlines position. Recent developments have altered our assessment of the company's management and prospects. Victor maintained a neutral tone despite his excitement. I understand. Our offer remains open, though market conditions have changed slightly. We're prepared to move forward at the originally discussed terms, but we need to execute quickly and confidentially. Within hours, Victor's legal team had prepared the necessary documentation. The acquisition of Transcontinental shares would push his ownership to 55%, a controlling interest that would allow him to convene a special shareholders meeting and vote on leadership changes. As the final details were being arranged, news broke that sent shockwaves through the financial world. Bradford Williams had implemented an extreme poison pill defense mechanism. Any entity acquiring more than 50% of Skyway would trigger the automatic issuance of new preferred shares to existing shareholders, massively diluting the value of the acquisition. Victor's phone rang immediately. It was Sandra Chen. Mr. Montgomery, we've just learned about this poison pill provision. I'm afraid our investment committee is reconsidering our position. Victor had anticipated this possibility. Ms. Chen, please inform your committee that we believe this last-minute defense mechanism violates Delaware corporate law, where Skyway is incorporated. Our legal team has already prepared a filing challenging its validity. Even if that's true, litigation could take months. We don't believe it will. The timing and nature of this mechanism suggests desperation, not proper corporate governance. We've identified a legal interpretation that should nullify it immediately. Victor was taking a calculated risk. Darius had discovered an obscure precedent suggesting that poison pill provisions implemented without proper board approval during an active acquisition attempt could be immediately stayed by the Delaware Chancery Court pending review. Sandra paused. Can you share this legal theory with our counsel? Of course. We'll have our team contact yours immediately. The gambit worked. After reviewing the legal argument, Transcontinental proceeded with the share transfer. By sunset, Victor Montgomery owned 55% of Skyway Airlines, at least on paper. The poison pill provision remained a looming threat that could still render his victory hollow. Victor's next move surprised even his closest advisors. Rather than immediately challenging the poison pill in court, he issued a press release announcing his majority ownership and calling for an emergency board meeting at Skyway's headquarters. You're walking into the lion's den, Amara warned. Bradford could be setting a trap. Possibly, Victor agreed, but appearing in person demonstrates confidence and commitment to Skyway's future. Fear would suggest we have something to hide. 2 days later, Victor arrived at Skyway's Dallas headquarters with a small team of executives and attorneys. News cameras crowded the entrance, capturing his confident stride into the building where he'd been dismissed and threatened just weeks earlier. In the boardroom, Bradford Williams sat at the head of the table, flanked by his loyal executives and legal team. His face betrayed no emotion as Victor entered, but the tension in the room was palpable. Mr. Montgomery, Bradford said coldly, this meeting is premature. Your alleged majority ownership is contested under our shareholder protection provisions. Victor took a seat across from Bradford. Those provisions were implemented improperly and without full board approval. But we're not here to argue legal technicalities. We're here to discuss Skyway's future. For the next hour, Victor presented a comprehensive analysis of Skyway's operational challenges, financial vulnerabilities, and cultural issues. He outlined a transformation plan that would preserve jobs while addressing the discrimination problems at their root. His approach was professional, data-driven, and focused on shareholder value. Several board members appeared surprised by the depth of his understanding and the constructiveness of his proposals. As Victor concluded, Richard Donahue spoke up. These recommendations have merit regardless of ownership questions. Mr. Williams, how do you respond to these specific operational concerns? Bradford's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. We're not here to entertain a hostile takeover disguised as helpful advice. Montgomery has no airline experience. He's motivated by personal grievance, not business logic. That's not what I asked, Richard pressed. These financial projections show serious cash flow problems in the next quarter. Do you dispute those figures? Bradford glared at Richard. Your duty is to this company, not to our competitor. My duty is to shareholders, Richard corrected. And I've heard nothing today that addresses these substantive concerns. 2 other board members voiced similar questions, creating visible fissures in what Bradford had expected to be unified opposition to Victor. As the meeting progressed, Bradford's responses became increasingly defensive and vague. When the discussion turned to the discrimination allegations, Bradford attempted to dismiss them entirely. These are isolated incidents being exploited for publicity. Victor calmly opened a folder. We have documented 173 cases of racial discrimination against first-class passengers in the past year alone. We have internal emails directing gate agents to apply additional scrutiny to passengers who don't fit the Skyway premium profile. Would you like me to continue? Several board members exchanged troubled glances. Bradford attempted to regain control of the narrative, promising a turnaround plan that would address all concerns. His passionate defense might have been convincing had it not been undermined by the detailed evidence Victor had presented. As the meeting neared its conclusion, 3 board members who had previously supported Bradford indicated they would need to reassess their position given the new information. The momentum had clearly shifted. Bradford, recognizing his eroding support, made a desperate final play. After most attendees had left, he approached Victor privately in the hallway. "Walk with me," he said with forced cordiality. In an empty conference room, Bradford's demeanor changed entirely. "Name your price," he said without preamble. "Everyone has one. Is it money, a board seat, a public apology? Tell me what it takes for this to go away." Victor studied the man who had directed so much effort toward destroying him professionally and personally. "This isn't about price, Bradford. It's about accountability." "Don't be naive," Bradford scoffed. "I'm offering you a clean exit. $10 million cash. Today, you sell your shares back at a premium and sign an NDA about this whole discrimination nonsense." Victor maintained a neutral expression while activating the recording function on his phone. "Are you offering me a personal payment to abandon a legitimate shareholder action?" Bradford smiled tightly. "I'm offering a practical business solution that benefits everyone. The amount could increase if necessary." "To what amount exactly?" $20 million. Final offer. But you need to decide now." Victor nodded thoughtfully, then walked to the door. "I'll need to consult with my team." Bradford's attempted bribe was the final piece Victor needed. He shared the recording with Richard Donahue, who immediately convened the independent board members. By morning, a majority had swung to Victor's side. The emergency board meeting reconvened the following day. Bradford arrived late, his usual confidence replaced by barely contained fury as he saw the changed seating arrangement. Richard Donahue now occupied the chair's position at the head of the table. "Before we begin," Richard announced, "the independent directors met in special session this morning and voted on a leadership matter. Effective immediately, Bradford Williams is removed as CEO of Skyway Airlines pending investigation of serious allegations including breach of fiduciary duty." Bradford stood abruptly. "This is illegal. You have no authority." "We have every authority under the bylaws," Richard interrupted calmly. "Your contesting of Mr. Montgomery's share ownership has been rejected by our outside counsel. He controls 55% of this company. Combined with the independent director's concerns about your recent actions, the decision was unanimous." Security personnel appeared at the boardroom entrance, the same security Bradford had once called to escort Victor out. As Bradford was escorted from the building he had controlled for decades, Victor felt no triumph, only a sober recognition of the responsibility he now bore for thousands of employees and millions of passengers. Richard turned to Victor once Bradford had gone. "The board has voted to name you executive chairman, effective immediately. We'll need to appoint an interim CEO while a search is conducted." Victor nodded. "I have some ideas about that. But first, I'd like to address the company." Within hours, Victor stood in Skyway's main operations center, surrounded by anxious employees uncertain about their future under new leadership. The moment represented a turning point, not just in Victor's battle with Bradford, but in his transformation, from aggrieved customer to corporate leader with responsibility for an entire organization. As he prepared to speak, Victor thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a denied first-class seat to controlling a major airline in just over a month, the real work of transformation was only beginning. Victor Montgomery stood before hundreds of Skyway Airlines employees gathered in the company's operations center. Thousands more watched via live stream from airports and offices across the country. The anxiety in the room was palpable. Leadership changes typically meant layoffs and restructuring. "My name is Victor Montgomery," he began, his voice calm and measured. "As of this morning, I am the executive chairman of Skyway Airlines. I know many of you are wondering what this means for your jobs, your benefits, and your futures." He paused, making eye contact with employees in the front rows. "Let me be clear, I didn't acquire this airline to dismantle it. I acquired it because I believe Skyway has incredible potential being squandered by leadership that lost sight of what matters most in this business: how we treat people." Victor shared a condensed version of his experience as a passenger, then broadened the perspective. My story isn't unique. Many of your customers have similar experiences daily. But here's what's important. I don't blame the frontline employees for a culture created in the boardroom. The problems at Skyway start at the top, not with the people doing the actual work of running an airline. Relief visibly spread through the audience as Victor outlined his initial priorities: operational stability, financial restructuring, and cultural transformation, with no mention of mass layoffs. Change is coming, he acknowledged, but it will be thoughtful change focused on making Skyway a place where everyone, employees and passengers alike, feels valued and respected. The employee address marked the beginning of Victor's strategic implementation phase. With Bradford Williams removed, Victor moved quickly to stabilize the airline while planning longer-term transformation. His first action was appointing Skyway's highly respected Chief Operating Officer Elena Rodriguez as interim CEO. Elena had maintained a low profile under Bradford's regime, but was widely admired by employees for her operational expertise and integrity. The board has full confidence in Elena's ability to lead during this transition, Victor announced at her introduction. She brings 20 years of airline experience and a deep understanding of Skyway's operations. Elena stepped forward. I've spent years watching decisions made that prioritize short-term profits over passengers and employees. That ends today. We're going to build the airline we've always known Skyway could be. Together, Victor and Elena assembled a transition team, combining Skyway veterans with external experts in airline operations, customer experience, and organizational culture. Their first task was a comprehensive audit of the airline's financial position, which revealed concerning results. Bradford's management was even worse than we suspected, Marcus reported during a private briefing. They've been deferring essential maintenance, understaffing critical positions, and using accounting maneuvers to mask liquidity problems. Victor studied the financial statements. How long until these issues become critical? 90 days at current cash burn rates. Their bond payments come due next quarter with no refinancing in place. Then we have 90 days to implement a turnaround plan, Victor replied. Let's get to work. The plan they developed was comprehensive and ambitious. On the financial front, Victor used his personal connections to secure bridge financing while restructuring Skyway's debt. His reputation for successful corporate transformations helped convince lenders to extend better terms than Bradford had been offered. Operationally, Elena implemented efficiency improvements that reduced costs without sacrificing service or safety. Maintenance schedules were restored to proper intervals. Staff shortages in key positions were addressed through accelerated hiring and training. The most significant changes came in company culture. Victor established a passenger experience task force led by Richard Donahue and including frontline employees from diverse backgrounds. Their mandate was to identify and eliminate discriminatory practices throughout the customer journey. One morning, Victor requested a meeting with Karen Whitfield, the gate agent who had denied him boarding weeks earlier. She arrived at his office, visibly nervous, clearly expecting to be fired. "Ms. Whitfield," Victor said, gesturing to a chair, "I want to understand something. When you denied me boarding that day, was that your decision or were you following policy?" Karen hesitated. "Both, I suppose. We were trained to apply additional verification to passengers who didn't match typical first-class demographics. It was never explicitly about race, but the implications were clear," Victor finished. "What would happen if you didn't follow these unofficial policies? Performance reviews would note customer service issues or failure to maintain cabin standards. People got demoted or transferred to less desirable routes." Victor nodded. "Thank you for your honesty. I'm not here to punish you for following the culture Bradford created. I want to understand how that culture works so we can dismantle it." Karen's experience proved invaluable in identifying the subtle ways discrimination had been institutionalized at Skyway. She joined the Passenger Experience Task Force, providing insider perspective on how policies were implemented at the gate level. Within 45 days, the first visible changes took effect. New boarding procedures eliminated subjective verification requirements. Crew training emphasized consistent service standards for all passengers. Customer feedback mechanisms were overhauled to better capture and address discrimination concerns. Financially, the airline showed its first signs of recovery. Operating costs decreased through efficiency improvements rather than service cuts. On-time performance improved as maintenance backlogs were addressed. Customer satisfaction scores began trending upward. The most dramatic moment in Skyway's transformation came unexpectedly. Bradford Williams, unwilling to accept his removal, had been waging a public relations campaign portraying himself as the victim of a hostile takeover. His efforts gained little traction until he filed a lawsuit challenging his termination and seeking reinstatement. The lawsuit created uncertainty just as Skyway was stabilizing. Investors worried about prolonged leadership battles. Employees feared Bradford's potential return. Victor needed to neutralize this threat decisively. Rather than fighting the lawsuit through conventional means, Victor made a bold move. His legal team petitioned the court to unseal all evidence related to Bradford's management, including the recordings of his bribe attempt and documentation of discriminatory practices. Bradford's attorneys fought vigorously to keep these records sealed, claiming they contained proprietary business information. The judge disagreed, finding sufficient public interest to warrant disclosure. The released evidence was damning. Financial. Media covered Bradford's apparent mismanagement and ethical lapses extensively. Former board members distanced themselves. Most significantly, federal regulators announced expanded investigations into potential securities violations and discrimination claims. Bradford withdrew his lawsuit within days, accepting a modest severance package in exchange for dropping all claims against Skyway. His public campaign for reinstatement ended abruptly as he focused on his own mounting legal troubles. With Bradford's threat eliminated, Victor accelerated Skyway's transformation. The airline announced a comprehensive rebranding, including a new name, Unity Air, symbolizing the inclusive culture they were building. "This isn't just a cosmetic change," Victor explained during the announcement event. "Unity Air represents our commitment to treating every passenger with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or what ticket they've purchased." The rebranding included new aircraft livery, redesigned terminals, updated uniforms, and refreshed service standards. Most importantly, it reflected actual operational changes, not just marketing promises. 6 weeks after taking control of Skyway, Victor stood in the same terminal where he'd been denied boarding. The gate areas had been redesigned to eliminate the physical barriers that had once separated first-class and economy passengers during the boarding process. New digital systems ensured consistent application of policies without relying on agent discretion. As Victor observed the boarding process for a flight to Chicago, he noticed a black executive being processed without the additional scrutiny that had once been common. The gate agent, a new hire specifically trained under the reformed procedures, treated every passenger with identical professional courtesy. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some long-term employees resistant to cultural changes resigned. Conservative media outlets occasionally portrayed the diversity initiatives as reverse discrimination. Competitors attempted to poach customers during the transition period. But the results spoke for themselves. Customer complaints decreased by 40%. Employee satisfaction scores reached their highest levels in a decade. On-time performance improved dramatically as maintenance and staffing issues were addressed. Most significantly, Unity Air's financial position stabilized. Victor's team had renegotiated vendor contracts, optimized route structures, and implemented technological efficiencies that Bradford had resisted. Within 90 days, the airline showed its first quarterly profit in 2 years. At the 100-day mark after taking control, Victor convened a special board meeting to announce the completion of the initial transformation phase and the beginning of sustainable growth. Richard Donahue, who had become a trusted advisor, congratulated Victor on the remarkable turnaround. "I've never seen anything like it," Richard admitted. "Most acquisitions destroy value in the short term. You've created value while simultaneously addressing deep-rooted cultural issues." "The two aren't separate," Victor replied. "An airline that discriminates against certain passengers is leaving money on the table. An airline where employees feel empowered to do the right thing operates more efficiently. Good ethics is good business." As the board meeting concluded, Victor received a message from Amara. Bradford Williams had been indicted by federal prosecutors for securities fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice related to his actions during the acquisition battle. If convicted, he faced potential imprisonment and significant financial penalties. Victor felt no satisfaction at the news. Bradford's downfall represented system failure, not personal victory. The goal had never been revenge, but transformation, creating an organization that reflected better values than its predecessor. The final piece of Victor's strategic victory came unexpectedly. The institutional investors who had initially resisted his acquisition now approached him about increasing their positions in Unity Air. Their analysis showed the reformed company outperforming industry peers on both financial and operational metrics. "The market is recognizing what we already knew," Marcus observed during their executive team meeting. "Culture drives performance. When people are treated with dignity, whether employees or customers, the business thrives." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "That's the message I want this entire journey to convey. What began as a response to discrimination has become a case study in how ethical leadership creates sustainable value." As Unity Air completed its first 100 days under new leadership, the transformation had exceeded even Victor's optimistic projections. What had started with a denied first-class seat had culminated in a reimagined airline serving as a model for the industry, proving that confronting discrimination wasn't just morally right, but strategically sound. The strategic victory was complete. Victor had not only acquired an airline but transformed its fundamental character. The final phase would focus on ensuring these changes became permanent features of the organization's DNA, outlasting any individual leader, including himself. 7 days after being denied his first-class seat, Victor Montgomery stood on the executive floor of what had been Skyway Airlines headquarters, now Unity Air's corporate home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of aircraft taking off and landing, each newly painted with the Unity Air logo that symbolized the company's transformation. Victor's assistant knocked gently on the door. "She's here, sir." "Thank you. Please show her in." Karen Whitfield entered tentatively, clearly uncomfortable in the executive suite. 7 days earlier, she had denied Victor boarding. Today, she faced him as her company's new owner. "Ms. Whitfield, thank you for coming," Victor said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit down." Karen perched nervously on the edge of the seat. "Mr. Montgomery, I want to apologize for what happened at the gate. I was just following." Victor raised a hand to pause her. "I didn't invite you here for an apology. I invited you here for a conversation about unconscious bias and how it affects both those who experience it and those who perpetuate it." For the next hour, Victor shared research on how organizational cultures can normalize discriminatory behavior, making good people participate in harmful systems. Karen gradually relaxed, eventually sharing her own experiences with the pressure to apply additional scrutiny to passengers who didn't fit Skyway's preferred customer profile. "We were never explicitly told to discriminate," she explained. "But the message was clear in how performance was evaluated. Supervisors would comment if too many non-traditional passengers were in first class." "And Bradford Williams created that culture?" Victor asked. Karen nodded. "It started at the top. Everyone knew Mr. Williams's preferences." As their conversation concluded, Victor made an unexpected offer. "Ms. Whitfield, I'd like you to join our new passenger experience team, your first hand. Knowledge of how discrimination was systematized would be invaluable in dismantling those systems." Karen looked stunned. "You're not firing me?" "No. Firing individual employees doesn't change a toxic culture. Transforming the culture does. And I need people who understand the old system to help build a better one." This approach, accountability, paired with opportunity for growth, became the hallmark of Victor's leadership at Unity Air. Rather than conducting mass terminations, he focused on comprehensive retraining and cultural transformation. Those willing to embrace the new values thrived. Those unwilling generally left voluntarily. The exception was Bradford Williams. The former CEO faced serious consequences for his actions during the acquisition battle. Federal prosecutors had uncovered evidence of securities fraud, including material misrepresentations to investors about Skyway's financial condition, and the fabricated allegations against Montgomery Digital Solutions. Bradford's legal troubles multiplied when investigators discovered his attempts to manipulate evidence and obstruct justice. His personal fortune diminished rapidly through legal fees and settlements. The man who had once commanded an airline empire now fought to stay out of federal prison. Victor took no pleasure in Bradford's downfall. When reporters asked for comment on the indictment, he focused on the future. Unity Air is looking forward, not backward. We're building an airline where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. This forward-looking approach defined Victor's transformation strategy. Rather than simply eliminating discriminatory practices, he established new standards of excellence that made inclusion a competitive advantage. Among his most impactful initiatives was a scholarship fund for minorities in aviation, funded with $20 million from his personal fortune. The program provided educational and career pathways for underrepresented groups, from pilots to mechanics to management. The best way to prevent discrimination is to ensure diversity at every level of the organization, Victor explained at the scholarship announcement. This isn't charity, it's investing in our future talent pipeline. Within the company, Victor implemented comprehensive anti-bias training for all employees, with particular emphasis on customer-facing roles. Unlike typical corporate diversity programs, Unity's approach focused on practical scenarios, measurable outcomes, and ongoing coaching rather than one-time workshops. The training extended beyond race to address all forms of bias. Gate agents, flight attendants, and other customer-facing staff learned to recognize and counteract their unconscious preferences, ensuring consistent treatment for all passengers regardless of appearance, accent, or ability. Victor also addressed the systemic issues that had enabled discrimination to flourish. Subjective policies like additional verification for security concerns were replaced with objective criteria applied equally to all passengers. Performance metrics were redesigned to reward inclusive service rather than maintaining an exclusive environment. These changes faced resistance from some quarters. Several long-term executives resigned rather than adapt to the new culture. Industry competitors spread rumors about declining service standards. Conservative media occasionally characterized the reforms as political correctness, undermining business efficiency. Victor addressed these challenges directly. When service metrics temporarily dipped during the transition, he personally apologized to affected passengers and accelerated improvements. When competitors attempted to poach premium customers with promises of exclusive service, Unity responded, with enhanced amenities available to all passengers. Most importantly, Victor ensured the transformation was financially sustainable. Unlike companies that treated diversity as a separate initiative disconnected from business strategy, Unity integrated inclusion into its core operating model. Treating people with dignity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business, Victor explained to shareholders. When passengers feel valued, they become loyal customers. When employees feel respected, they deliver better service. The financial results supported his approach. 6 months after the acquisition, Unity Air reported its strongest quarterly performance in 5 years. Passenger numbers increased across all cabin classes. Employee turnover decreased significantly, reducing training costs and improving service consistency. Wall Street analysts who had initially questioned Victor's motives now praised his strategic vision. Unity Air's stock price, which had plummeted during Bradford's final months, recovered and then surpassed its historical highs. The airline became a case study in business schools for successful corporate transformation. Throughout this period of intense professional focus, Victor maintained perspective on what mattered most. When Zoe was officially accepted to Princeton on her own merits, he took a rare day off to celebrate with her. "I'm proud of you," he told his daughter over dinner. "Not just for Princeton, but for how you handled yourself during the difficult times." Zoe smiled. "I learned from watching you, Dad. You could have just complained about what happened or sued them. Instead, you changed the whole system." Victor nodded thoughtfully. Change only happens when someone refuses to accept things as they are. As Unity Air approached the one-year anniversary of Victor's acquisition, he initiated the final phase of his transformation plan, ensuring the changes would outlast his leadership. He had never intended to run an airline long-term. His expertise and passion remained in the technology sector. Victor worked with the board to implement governance structures that would maintain the inclusive culture after his departure. Diversity metrics were incorporated into executive compensation. Customer experience surveys specifically tracked equal treatment. An independent ethics committee with representation from outside civil rights organizations provided ongoing oversight. Most significantly, Victor ensured diverse leadership at the highest levels. When Elena Rodriguez was confirmed as permanent CEO after her successful interim period, she became one of the few Latina chief executives of a major airline. The senior leadership team and board of directors reflected the diversity of the passengers they served. On the anniversary of his denied boarding, Victor returned to Atlanta International Airport, not as a passenger but as executive chairman of Unity Air. The terminal had been renovated with design elements specifically created to make all travelers feel welcome. Gone were the velvet ropes and subtle barriers that had once separated premium passengers from others. As Victor observed the boarding process, he noticed a familiar face at the gate. Karen Whitfield, now a passenger experience manager supervising implementation of the new boarding protocols. She noticed him and approached with confident professionalism. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. Everything's running smoothly today. On-time departure expected for all flights." "Thank you, Ms. Whitfield. How's the new system working?" "Honestly, better than I expected. Passengers are happier, and our jobs are actually easier without all the unofficial verification procedures." Victor nodded. Sometimes the right thing is also the smart thing. As they spoke, Victor noticed a black family being processed for first-class boarding without hesitation or additional scrutiny. The parents, dressed in casual vacation attire rather than business suits, received the same courteous treatment as the white executives in line behind them. Their young daughter, about 10 years old, beamed with excitement about her first flight. The sight crystallized for Victor why this entire journey had been necessary. That little girl would grow up in a world slightly better than the one he had experienced, a world where she wasn't automatically viewed with suspicion because of her skin color. The ripple effects of systemic change would touch countless lives in ways impossible to measure, but profound in impact. Later that day, Victor convened his final board meeting as executive chairman. He had prepared his transition plan, ready to step back from daily involvement while maintaining sufficient ownership to ensure the company's cultural transformation remained on track. "It's been an extraordinary year," Richard Donahue said as the meeting concluded. "You took a failing airline with a toxic culture and transformed it into an industry leader. Not many people could have accomplished that." Victor shook his head slightly. "It wasn't about what I could accomplish. It was about what needed to change. I just happened to have the resources to make it happen when the opportunity presented itself." After the meeting, Victor walked through Unity Air's headquarters one last time as its executive chairman. Employees nodded respectfully as he passed, many having witnessed the remarkable transformation of their workplace. In the operations center, he paused to watch the digital map tracking Unity flights across the globe. Thousands of passengers traveling safely to their destinations, each treated with the dignity every human deserves. 1 week after being denied his first-class seat, Victor Montgomery had gained control of an airline. 1 year later, he had transformed not just a company, but an industry's understanding of how inclusivity and business success reinforce each other. What had begun as a response to personal discrimination had evolved into a case study in ethical leadership and systemic change. As Victor left the building, he reflected on the journey. He hadn't set out to buy an airline or become a corporate reformer. He had simply refused to accept discrimination as inevitable or unchangeable. That refusal, combined with the resources to act on his convictions, had created transformation far beyond what he had initially imagined. In the end, Victor's most powerful tool hadn't been his wealth or corporate influence, but his unwillingness to accept the status quo when the status quo was fundamentally unjust. It was a lesson he hoped would inspire others to use whatever resources they had, large or small, to create change where they saw the need. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could change the system? What would you have done in Victor's position? Comment below with your thoughts on how we can all work toward more equitable treatment in our daily lives. Don't forget to like this video if you found Victor's journey inspiring, subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation, and share with someone who needs to be reminded that positive change is possible, even in the face of entrenched systems. Thank you for watching this incredible story of how one denied seat led to a revolution in an entire industry. Victor Montgomery's journey teaches us that confronting racism requires more than individual complaints. It demands systemic change. When faced with discrimination, Victor could have simply filed a lawsuit or accepted token compensation. Instead, he recognized that true transformation requires addressing the root causes that enable discriminatory practices to flourish. The story demonstrates that positive change often requires leveraging whatever resources we possess. Victor used his financial position not for revenge, but to create lasting impact. He understood that replacing leadership without changing culture would merely perpetuate the problem under new management. Perhaps most importantly, this story illustrates that ethical leadership and business success are not opposing forces. By creating an inclusive environment that valued all passengers equally, Unity Air achieved better financial results than its discriminatory predecessor. This challenges the false narrative that diversity initiatives undermine profitability. Victor's approach, holding individuals accountable while offering opportunities for growth, shows how to balance justice with compassion. Rather than seeking punishment, he focused on creating a better system for everyone involved, from passengers to employees. The ultimate lesson is that meaningful change begins with refusing to accept injustice as inevitable. One person's unwillingness to tolerate discrimination can catalyze transformation that impacts countless lives. Has racism or discrimination ever affected your life or someone you care about? How did you respond, and what would you do differently after hearing Victor's story? Comment below with your experiences or thoughts on fighting systemic injustice. If you found Victor's strategic approach inspiring, hit that like button to help more people discover this story of transformation. Did his decision to change the system rather than seek revenge resonate with you? Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about overcoming injustice and creating positive change in unexpected ways. Do you know someone struggling against discrimination who needs inspiration? Share this video with them as a reminder that change is possible, even when facing deeply entrenched systems. Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is not just fighting back, but transforming the entire playing field. Thank you for joining us on this journey from discrimination to transformation. May we all find the courage to challenge injustice and create positive change in our own spheres of influence, whether large or small.